it's me. Today, I'm going to talk about funeral processions, why they're important, what they intend to accomplish, and most importantly, how to respect them. So the feasibility and logistics around a funeral procession are intended to keep the funeral attendees together as they travel from the funeral home to the church and then the cemetery, sometimes just the funeral home to the cemetery. It's not very likely that most funeral homes, churches, and cemeteries are all in the same location. And it's also not very likely that everyone attending the funeral knows the area that the funeral is being held. So most importantly, we want to keep everyone together. We have to get to church and the cemetery on time. And the easiest way to control that is to make sure that everyone's together. This way we can also control and make easier the parking process. A lot of churches and cemeteries don't have the easiest parking situations, and especially a cemetery. You got to remember that a cemetery on any given day could have multiple funerals coming through, and they need to make sure that each funeral is able to get in and to get out safely and in a somewhat timely manner. Most cemeteries want the committal service to be between 15 and 20 minutes long because they have to open the grave and finish what they need to do and be prepared for the next funeral coming in. If people are attending the funeral and they're from out of town, they could easily get lost if that procession gets broken up, and nobody wants that. When the funeral director, which the lead car, the first car in the procession, is always driven by someone from the funeral home, they're the lead car, and the basic rule is to keep the speed down because we want to make sure everyone can stay tight and close together in the procession. We do let everyone know to put their hazards on and their lights, and we usually give out tags that are brightly colored. Anything that we can do to make it obvious to passersby that this is a funeral. So when that lead car comes to a stoplight and that light is green, then the funeral can proceed through that intersection, even after it ends up turning red. As long as we stay slow and consistent in our speed, it usually becomes obvious enough to the people on the other sides of the intersection to know that there's a funeral, and they usually respect that. If the lead car comes to a stoplight and it is red, the lead car has to abide by that red light and wait. It's also a good opportunity to, look in the rearview mirror, make sure you have everyone. I've driven processions in my life as a funeral director, as small as 2 or 3 cars plus the hearse, as large as probably over 100. Sometimes processions also have to travel on the highway. It gets a little tricky, and the line of thought is to keep the procession at the lowest end of the speed limit, which is usually around 55 miles an hour. And the intention is to stay slow in the right lane so that people that are entering and exiting the highway can pass through the procession to get on and off. But we're going slow enough that the likelihood that someone's going to stay in the middle of the procession and essentially break it up is not very likely. We want people to pass in and out of that right lane and allow the funeral to stay together. Sometimes if there's a family connection or the deceased has a connection to police or fire or, certain levels of military honors, sometimes there are escorts from the police and state troopers, and those obviously are a lot easier to convey to the public that this is a funeral procession, and most people will see those lights. But when a funeral procession is traveling through a city or a town without a police escort, it's a little harder, and sometimes people are very quick to think, oh, this person is, running a red light and I should get in front of them. The other thing you need to remember about the procession is the family that is in that procession. They are dealing with a loss that has totally disrupted their world. And one of the most isolating dynamics and feelings when you're in the midst of grief, especially that first week, is, wow, my whole world has been disrupted, yet the world keeps going on. People are still, getting their mail, going about their thing. So when processions go through towns and cities, and people, especially older generations, notice it's a funeral, stop walking, take their hat off. Or when you drive by, sometimes people are campaigning, holding signs on the side of the road, and they see that it's a funeral and they have everyone lower their signs as a sign of respect. These little things mean so much to the family. You have no idea how many people and families have told me how much it's moved them when they've seen, a gentleman on the side of the road was walking his dog, and once he saw it was a funeral, he took his hat off, had his dog sit, and they solemnly just kind of honored the funeral procession as it went by. The more that you can do that, you're showing solidarity, you're showing honor to the family that feels like their world is disrupted. You're showing a little crack in that isolation by honoring their loss and their love for the person that has died. So take a second. If you see someone running through a red light or slow cars with tags, sometimes processions are able to use purple funeral flags. Purple tends to be kind of the color that we've adopted. Sometimes there are strobe lights. Some cities and towns allow them, some don't. So we do everything we can to make the funeral stand out, but especially if you see a hearse or a limousine and cars going slow and staying tight together, it's most likely a funeral. And I know that it's tough when you're rushing and you're trying to get where you need to go, and it can be annoying to be stuck on the road letting a funeral go by, but really it's never longer than a minute or so, and it won't hurt to just kind of send the family some love, show some respect, show that you honor what they're going through, because nobody wants to be in a funeral procession. So logistically, it's important to keep everyone together. Logistically, it's important that we are able to orderly control the parking, the directions, the timely manner that we get to church, that we get to a cemetery, that we get to wherever the service is being held. It's also logistically important that we make sure all the funeral attendees stay together, because some of them could be very lost and not know their way around the town and get completely separated from the rest of the funeral, potentially missing parts of the service. So there's a lot of reasons to respect the funeral procession, and it goes back to the beginning of time. I remember in funeral school talking about Rome, where bodies were buried outside of the city. So there would be a walking procession as the family would escort their loved one, through the town, through the city, outside of the gates for the burial. And everyone would kind of stop and respect this poor family that was going outside of the gates to bury their loved one. So the sentiment of respecting the family in their grief has gone back centuries. So let's keep it going. Let's be less quick to get angry when we see a funeral, and think about what that family's going through that day in those cars. So yeah, that's the funeral procession. If you have any other questions, let me know. This was a great request that I received as a private message on Facebook to talk about this subject. So yeah, so keep the questions coming, and I will keep the videos coming. I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.